Hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I'm going to start you out with a question. Okay. It's a two-part question, so stick with me. Do you need practical, specific, and tactical answers that get extraordinary results? Now, if we stopped right there, you'd be like, yes, I am in. Well, I'll tell you what, there's an added benefit to this because the second question is, do you want it in a short period of time? So now all the entrepreneurs, all the high D's in the disc, they're all really listening because they only have like 9 minutes. So I'm going to try and do my best here in the next few minutes. I'm hanging out with Denise Cooper, who happens to be CEO of Remarkable Leadership Lessons. How are you today?
I am fabulous. And just one little thing, if you're a high D, hey, if you're a high D, 9 minutes is really long. So I'm thinking you need to cut that down.
Oh man, see, I'm a high D, high I, so that high I gives me 9
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah, a little room in there. But if you're a D,
exactly.
You got about 34 seconds. Okay?
That's awesome. That is so good. Well, thank you so much for hanging out. I'm super stoked to unpack some of these things with you. And Absolutely. So Remarkable Leadership Lessons. I love the name. So tell us what's going on over there.
Well, you know what? We are just rocking, even in this time of chaos in our nation's history, our world history, I think it is. But really, we are helping leaders in these times when, they really don't have a lot of time. And they are so focused on getting the bottom line, getting people aligned, getting the products in, to dealing with supply chain issues, those kinds of things, that they're forgetting to relax a little bit and lean into, you can trust the people around you. Here's how you trust them.
Sure.
You start out by having a vision and holding on to your vision. And it's not really about making the money, because the money is the result of doing good work, right? Yep. You do the right things in the right order.
Yep.
The bottom line grows. It's all the other stuff in between that will get you.
Yeah, exactly. Money seems to be like the easy part at times, it's all the other stuff. So yeah, I agree 100%. So when I saw this, and then when I was preparing for this, Denise, I see this Remarkable Leadership Lessons, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I bet you there's a couple of them that are like super high on our list. So I'm going to start out with asking that question. Are there specific leadership lessons that tend to always rise to the top for you?
Absolutely. And it's not just me saying it, but if you look at the research on what makes a great leader, we have to get rid of, first thing we have to do is align ourselves around what a leader actually does. And sure. I'm really talking about leaders in organizations.
Okay.
And so the first thing they have to do is they have to be self-aware. You got to know what your zone of competence is, where you what you love, and kind of build around that. But you've also got to be self-aware on how you impact other individuals. And that your intent, that thing that rolls around in your head, is not always translated in your behavior, because sure. somebody else is going to look at you and see that behavior and then make some kind of judgment around it. But you've got to be really clear about that. So you've got to figure out who you are, and then you've got to plan where you want to go. And I'm not saying you have to have all the steps in between, but a good leader has to be able to describe the new state that they're in, that we want to get to. What does that look like? And it's got to be more than what I said before. Like I said before, it's got to be more than money, because money is the result of doing the right things in the right order. Yeah. So what does that look like? And then you've got to be able to take stock of where you are today in a non-judgmental way. Too often we get focused on the things we don't like, the things that, kind of irritate us about stuff, but you got to let that go and say, hey, it is what it is. This is where we're at. Now, who do I have on my team that can fill in the gaps on what we need to do to get from here to there? And then you've got to be really good at managing the tension of change. Because your culture, the people that you have now, they have habits. They know how to live in this world. They don't know how to live in the vision world that you have created. And
Sure.
so you've got to be able to manage our natural instinct to not want to change,
Right.
right?
Yep. You change, Denise. I don't want to change. Right.
Exactly, exactly. And
Yep.
so you've got to be able to manage the process of change. And when we look at really high performing leaders, the number one skill that they have outside of understanding who they are is understanding how to manage change.
Wow, that's great. Well, I can tell you that I just wrote down those 4 things. Maybe I wrote them in my words, but I can tell you that when you said the first one, I heard brakes going like crazy. I saw brake lights because entrepreneurs and self-aware, self anything, I want to skip that step, Denise. I want to jump right to plan where to go. Okay. I
Yeah,
want to plan something. I want to, my parents told me when I was a kid, don't just stand there, do something. Right.
yeah, yeah.
And so now I'm learning as I get older, it's like, don't just do something, stand there. And it's really hard to stand there. It's really hard to introspectively look and see what am I not good at, because it creates a opportunity where I have to do something with that. For me, it was super easy. All my businesses that I started was super easy to say, I am not good at accounting. Therefore, someone else is going to do that. Right.
Yep,
That was
yep,
super easy. That
yep,
was an easy
yep.
one for me. But you get into where there's maybe something that's a little near and dear to my heart, then we're going to have, it's going to come to fisticuffs, because I'm going to protect myself at all expense. So when you're starting out with somebody, working with somebody, and they're not self-aware, do
Yeah.
you use like an EQ assessment? What do you do to try and help a business owner, entrepreneur with their self-awareness?
Well, there's a couple things that I do. One is that if they're open to it, then I do have a battery of or 3 tests that I do. One is the DISC, which is what you
Yep.
mentioned earlier today,
Right.
which helps them understand. And I take it from the point of view of your communication style and the impact of your communication style on others. So remember, I said that we have this intent in our middle of our head,
Yep.
yet our behavior sends a whole different set of signals
Right.
to other individuals. Well, I use the DISC to help people understand. So if you're a high D and you're like bing, 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 but you're dealing with somebody who might be a slower thinker,
Yep.
then you're overwhelming them and you're not going to get the best out of them. And so
Right.
helping them understand that it's not really about what they intend to do, but what the behavior is that they do. The DISC helps me get that. The other one I use is motivators. So,
Okay.
all that whole hidden thing of what really motivates us, what really gets your goat going? Is it that you learn to love? Well, guess what? If you love to learn, then one of the things you're going to do is constantly be in the creation mode, because you're
Right.
constantly trying to get more and more and more. But when you're running a business, you need systems and processes that are relatively stable and measurable. Well, what now we have to focus what you're learning on how to create those stable, relatively stable, and systems that are measurable, and so that you get a sense of what has to change, what doesn't have to change, and when you're thinking about change, what are the levers? You got to be able to leverage. So if I
Mhm.
push this button, it's going to give me a 25%. But if I push this one over here, it might be only a 5%. Which one are you going to really spend your time? Because
Sure.
time is the one non-renewable resource that you got going on here. So you got to figure out how to manage those tensions. And then the last assessment I use is called judgment.
Hmm.
And basically, it tells us or you, what does it take for you to say, bingo, yes? Because there are some things that are good decisions, but you're not going to see them because they didn't come in the package that you're most comfortable with.
Sure.
So the 3 of those together, if I choose to use an assessment, I use
Yep.
those to help a person see where their blind spots are and how their behavior could be interpreted by others, which already increases their impact about 4-fold.
That's awesome. And then I'm assuming once a leader buys in to an assessment, then the next step is to assess the team, assess the company to be able to really maximize that communication.
Yeah, I generally stick with just the team, the people that you're going right with that right there. And it's
Gotcha.
interesting because I can use assessments in such a way that it also tells not just individually, but as a group, how do you behave? So what are
Sure.
those boundaries that you've set up? And I'm not talking about, oh, we don't lie, we don't do this, we don't do that. But I'm saying, when are you all too polite to challenge the leader?
Yep, all the
Okay.
S's, right? They're super accommodating. They're
Yes. When is that showing up?
yeah, exactly. You know what? Unfortunately, a lot of times it either shows up at home or it shows up under extreme stress. And then neither one of them, unfortunately, get that dealt with. So, are you improving communication on the team with these types of assessments, helping people with their blind spots, helping people understand, the differences that are on the team? Is that where you guys get into that?
Yeah. And so we start there, but then we move very quickly to, okay, so how does that show up and what behaviors are impeding each other? And where do you find the courage to change? So knowledge is one thing, but knowledge alone does not change your results. It's
Right.
knowledge, the acquisition of knowledge and the application of knowledge. And so you can learn all you want about yourself, but now we have to figure out how do you apply this knowledge so that you get different results. And so the majority of I have two programs. One is for kind of the middle management and one is for senior management. Both of them spend an enormous amount of time. How do we apply this in our business so that we're getting better results, different results, the results that we want to get out of this? And how do we help other individuals get comfortable with this thing called change?
Yeah.
Because study after study, we don't really like to hear it or anything like that. But the reality is that, the head of the organization, the main role is to set the strategy, to say, this is the market, these are the customers, these are the products, and this is the customer experience that you're going to have.
Sure.
And this is what I want to create a system around. Well,
Yep.
that is the goal of the CEO and the senior team. But too often, because as you move up that corporate ladder or that entrepreneurial ladder, you were the guy who was, frying the chicken up,
Yep.
you were the guy who was mopping the floor.
Yep.
You were,
Yep. So you still mop the floor, right?
I'm just saying,
Yep.
but you did it because your business got built in the very beginning because
Right.
you were elbow deep into actually doing the work. But there comes a time as your business grows that you've got to step back. And you've got to look at where you're headed, how the business is put together. What does it look like in the landscape and what's changing that might impact your bottom line? And
Yeah.
that's the piece that we spend the majority of our time trying to figure out, how not to be so much of the doer, but the planner and the implementer of
Sure.
change.
Yeah. Well, and I think delegation is really a hard word for a lot of people.
Yes.
Because you know what? Seriously, Denise, it's just easier if I do it myself.
Yeah,
I
I
hear
know.
that all the time, and I totally agree that the first time and the second time and maybe the third and maybe the fourth, but if this is a repetitive situation, by the 10th time, I don't buy in that you are the best person and that it is easier to do it yourself. So, but that's a challenge for people. It's like, I want to circle back to what you said about knowledge and application. Because I am in that spot where I'm motivated by knowledge. I love to read books, and I was for a while I was reading like a book a month, and I thought, this is really cool. And then I stopped and I looked back and I'm like, so how much of this are you actually applying, right? And I'm just like, man, it was just like I do these 10 tips to better communicate when I do trainings around the country, and I was somewhere in an event and somebody came up to me after and said, you know what, I didn't learn a thing from you.
Oh my.
Right. And I was like, wow, so I was fortunate that I had a good response.
Answer. Yeah.
I said, you know what? I said, this isn't about learning. I said, the question really is how much are you actually doing of these 10?
Yeah.
And then kind of the light bulb went on for him. And then it took on a whole new meaning because it's hard for us to learn something new. I mean, the older you get, the more you've heard, it's like there's nothing new under the sun, but yet, there's maybe something new. And so I'm always about the application. So when you find somebody that loves to absorb knowledge,
Yes.
just taking feverish notes while Denise is talking, what do you do to encourage the application of that?
Oh, I stopped them. I'm like, okay, tell me what you're taking these notes about here.
Uh-oh, don't show them my doodles, right?
Yeah. Doodles are different than
Yeah.
taking, what you were saying. It's like
Yeah.
being in school and the professor's lecturing and you're now,
Yeah.
now I was watching some students and they just simply turn on the phone and record the whole thing. But
Sure.
there was a time when people were writing those things down. And the first thing I
Right.
say is, let's stop about what is it that you decided to do. And I asked the question just as simply as you did. Based on what you just heard, well, first thing I say is, tell me what you heard so that I know that you heard what I meant to say, not
Right.
what you interpreted what I said.
Right.
But then the next question out of that is, so now that you've heard this, how does this help you with the challenge that's on the table?
Sure.
So when I'm coaching or when I'm working with a team, I'm very clear about bringing them back to the central problem.
Okay.
Because part of the issue is that as we keep talking, as we keep learning, we're kind of like aimlessly going after what it is we learned versus, okay, how does that apply to this? And I'll give you a different analogy on this, Dave. If you read every book, if you listen to all the podcasts, et cetera, everybody says you got to have a vision in place, right?
Yep.
Well, a vision is nothing but a goal in which you intend to get to.
Right.
So when we're talking about, are you aligning your behavior? Are you aligning your organization to the vision? What we're saying is, are you ensuring and measuring that the behaviors and the results that have been achieved are actually aligned up with what is going to happen, what you envision is going to happen? How are you changing the world? How are you changing the world for your customers or the industry or however your target is, your niche is? And so constantly, whether it's in individual coaching or it's a team coaching or working with, an association, it's really about, if you're going to get here, what are the things that you've got to touch along the way to make sure that you're aligned against that? And so it's the same thing. You take notes. Okay, great. What out of these notes is going to help you get to where you want to go? What's the one or two things that you're taking away from this? And what can I count on you to get done so that you and I know that you're not just acquiring more knowledge? Because you're smart already. You couldn't be in business and not be smart. You got that one covered. Okay.
Sure. Yep.
Now there's the greed factor, right?
Yep.
I could be smarter.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's put a floor in. You're already smart.
Sure.
And you're already motivated.
Yep.
And you're already a caring individual. Otherwise, you would not be taking on this thing called entrepreneurial, this thing called being a CEO. You wouldn't do that. That's part of your nature. Stop holding on to you got to prove that. Now it's about rolling up your sleeves and getting to the real deal of how do you change the behavior? How do you influence and inspire people to want to do the right thing? And how do you tell them what the right thing is to get where they need to go?
Wow, that's so cool. And the goal, so change vision to goal, like you said for a second, it's amazing how every single sport out there, the goal is so clear.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, more points in baseball, less points in golf. I mean, there's a goal, there's a hole, there's whatever. I mean, each sport is so crystal clear that we could ask pretty much anybody, what's the goal of this sport? And they'd know the answer. But you say, what's the goal of your company? And it's like all of a sudden it's super ambiguous, a lot of ums and a lot of looking at the ceiling and, a lot of uncomfortableness. Why is that? Why are we as entrepreneurs so vague on our goals?
Because I think that this is a Deniseism, so not sure it's got a lot of research around it. But when I look around, if you went to school in this country, everything is aligned around making money.
Mm-hmm.
And so we begin to measure that. And so when people start taking their business to market, they had a heart, they had a dream, they had something that they wanted to be able to do. Oftentimes it's around something that they happen to be really good at.
Sure.
But running a business is a little different. It's about systems and processes and managing people. And whether you went to B school, but got an MBA or a business school, or whether you just saw your mom, dad, or you were a kid that picked up a lemonade stand.
Mm-hmm.
If you read anything, it very rarely talks about the systems and processes and how do you put those things in place. How do you get people to do the right thing based on what you need? Most of them will talk about what goes wrong. They'll tell you, they don't even talk about how systems work. It all is applicable under departments, but an organization is an organism.
Mm-hmm.
How does the organism work together? That's where I think we get off.
Gotcha. So, there's a great book called People Over Profit, which is a really great book that talks about if you treat your people right, to your point, the profit just automatically comes.
Yeah.
And that's how, like when I wrote my book, Growing on Purpose, I found out that if you improve your customer's experience and you strengthen your team, profit just automatically comes.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we look at the company culture, we're kind of talking about that. I want to jump into that a little bit. How do you think that you can take your company culture to the next level to either get where you want to go, get where your customer wants you to go, or get where you need to go to stay in business?
Well, from a process point of view, it's pretty easy, but the doing, and I'll talk a little bit in two parts here. So the process is basically, okay, so where do you think you want to go from a culture point of view? And the way you find that out is you take stock in what's happening right now.
See, there you go again, saying I got to, this whole thing, just give me something to do so I can start running. I don't want to stop.
Take stock of what it is. And
you know
what? Let me give it to you really easy.
Okay.
You know how you go through, and so if you've got a business where you've got an inventory of stuff, how you're going around with the scanner going, boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll give you a list of things that you might see. One is the invisible army. Invisible army. This is from Brene Brown. People like her, so I'm using her language.
Sure.
Is how you're in the office and somebody comes in and says, "Hey, Dave, in that meeting you said XYZ, and but some people out here are really having a hard time with that." Now, I'm with you.
There you go.
But they ain't.
Oh man, I didn't know it was called the Invisible Army. That is cool.
The invisible we that I'm representing.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that is so cool.
So how many times does the invisible army show up?
Wow.
And kind of
that is awesome.
So here's another one.
I'm writing that one down. I'm taking a note. I'm writing that down. Okay. So don't ask me what I'm writing down.
Okay. So here's another one. How many times have you been in a meeting or you talk to somebody and after the meeting, everybody's standing around talking about what was in there? Now, no decisions were made in the meeting, but everybody's making a decision afterwards. And in some organization, there's the meeting before the meeting, meeting, and then the meeting after the meeting.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. 3 meetings at once. Isn't that crazy?
And so there's a whole list of little things that, of things that you can begin to just sit and in probably 15 minutes, you can go, yep, got that invisible army thing going on. Yep, sure. I've got gossip in it. Yep, I've got lack of decision making. Yep, And so, okay, now 3 things that I really don't think is supporting my culture.
Okay.
Now, okay, what do you really want? Well, I you know what? I want people, if you've got a problem with something I said or something Joe said or Mary said or something like that, then I want you to be able to go and talk to that person first. Pull me in when there's an issue that looks like XYZ. When
Okay.
we have meetings, we should be really clear on what decisions are going to come out of those meetings and who owns those decisions. We should have titles for our meetings. Some meetings are just there to go over the analysis of the numbers that you got so that you're thinking about that. Well, then this is our analysis meeting. And guess what? It's only going to last 20 minutes. Boom, done.
Sure.
Then there's the decision meetings. We'll be clear. Who has the responsibility for saying yes or no on the whatever's on the table? Who are the people that you need to have something that they recommend? Bring your best thinking to this problem. Who are you consulting saying, you know what, we need somebody outside of here to come in? And lastly, when are you, the decision is made and we're moving on.
Sure.
So I'm informing you, be clear on what is happening in these meetings, whether they're one-on-ones or ones-to-many. So once you get, kind of the future things you don't want, the current things that are happening, then it's really about what do you need to do to change to send a signal. And it's a lot like sales. So most of the time we are so busy, like you said, I got to keep doing what I'm doing. I just got to keep doing what I'm doing.
Right.
Generally, it takes about 7 times for you to say something before I realize, oh, wait a minute, Dave might be serious about that because he keeps repeating that. Let me pay attention a little bit. Same thing in sales, right? You got to have a process that hits your customer or potential customer 7 times before they go, who's Dave doing over there?
Right.
That might be something I need.
Yeah.
Then after that, I say 12 times.
Wow.
You got to figure out 12 different ways in which you do it. So do you say it in the meetings? Do you bring in placards? Do you have a Friday meeting where, this is what we're going to talk about, and you get people to bring ideas? How are you rewarding and recognizing people for doing good? Stop looking at what's going bad. Say, hey, there's Denise over there, and she did X, Y, Z.
Sure.
What I like is the fact she did it like this. Who else can do this? Have blooper days. One of the best things a boss can do is bring in blooper days. Why? Because we all want to learn what's the right thing to do, but we're all afraid to admit we're not perfect.
Yep.
Right? So, Dave, this month, what was the biggest thing that you did that went wrong? What was it? How did it happen? And how did you fix it?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Now you're talking vulnerability here, Denise. Now we changed the corner again. I mean,
that whole,
oh my gosh.
Yep, that whole thing of looking at me. What the heck is that about? Right.
You just keep pounding me with this thing, but I think that's so different than how leadership was a number of years ago. You fill in the blank on how long. I mean, I remember hearing my dad talk about the boss, and sitting in the corner office and barking out orders. And, I mean, he was like the king and everybody had to kind of bow down before him. And, I don't remember the company or the person. I just remember that kind of process. And, I thought early on for myself that really didn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
And so, I tried to lead my people in a different way, more of a servant leadership where I'm trying to support their efforts rather than have them support my efforts. There's way more of them than me. So, I just think that, the team is so vital that in the past it was overlooked. And now that it's kind of in front of us, we don't really know what to do with it because it's made up of so many different people and so many different behavioral styles that we understand through DISC. So, I always laugh when we do a group wheel and you have a wheel where, there's 10 people on a team or whatever, and 9 of them are all kind of grouped together. And then there's just one, over by themselves, and everybody's, you pass them out. And then, for me, I laminate like everything. So I laminate, pass them out, and they're looking at this and they're just like, everybody starts laughing. I mean, the class hasn't even started yet.
Yeah.
People are just getting such a kick out of it. So, it's great if you can transition that fear and intrepidation into laughing at yourself.
Yep.
And a lot of it starts with the vulnerability of the instructor, the leader, whatever. So is that something that you do on a pretty regular basis, is in those types of trainings, is make yourself vulnerable so that they see how it's done? Or how do you train or teach vulnerability?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because so you've got a book, I've got a book, everybody's got a book here. And in it, I give exact stories. It's I call it airplane reading, although we're not flying as much as we want. In
Sure.
30 minutes, you can not only read the story, but you can take notes and you can figure out whether you fit into it.
Sure.
And one of the things that I found, the difference from when I started doing my work and where I am now is exactly what you just said, this idea of vulnerability. Because everybody who comes to me comes vulnerable. Something didn't go wrong and they're too ashamed to say it to somebody else. And maybe sometimes it's not even shame, as is if you're in a corporation or you're trying to move up the corporate ladder, that kind of thing, or get into, you might be a franchiser and you want to move to a different level in the
Sure.
organization and whatnot. One of the things that happens is that we have this thing that we are attached to perfection. I have to look perfect, right? And so by me being able to share stories about my life and how I failed, those first aha moments of when I moved from, a manager to a director to I'm a vice president, head of HR for, several companies anyway. When I can share those stories with people, then, like the first time I realized that people were actually following me.
Mm-hmm.
You start out and you're never really sure that you're going to be a leader, right? But do you remember the first time that you realized, oh my God, people are actually listening to you and taking your advice? I just gotten into the VP role, had a staff meeting. I'm excited, hey, what about this? And what about that? And how about this? And oh, we could do this and this. And I'm sitting there, I'm the same person I was 5 days ago before I got this VP title.
Sure.
We used to kick it around all the time. And I just was doing the same thing. I went away, and about a week later, my secretary comes in and says, Denise, you got 7 new projects that are coming in, and everybody wants to get on your calendar to talk to you about the project. I'm like, what are you talking about, new project? She said, you remember that meeting you had and you were just kind of tossing out this, and this. Well, everybody went off and started working on that because they thought that's what you wanted. I went, oh my God.
Whoops.
Yep,
Oh,
let me
no.
reel that sucker back in.
Yeah, exactly.
But how often have we forgotten that people have assigned this title to us?
Sure.
And so our words have more weight than we in our own head think about.
Sure.
And so the book has all these stories of leaders who the weight of their words is invisible to them. And then suddenly, as they go through the process with me, they realize how their words are landing on people. And what is in their head is not always in there. I've got stories in there of, a guy who's, he happens to be white. He's working with a woman who happens to be Black. And people have not told her the truth about her performance and what she needs. And so she's angry.
Sure.
And now she's with him and things are just snowballing out of the way. And
Sure.
he's trying to figure out, wait a minute, how do I talk to her? I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to, wind up in HR legal suit kind of thing, right? I mean, that's the big fear right now, right?
Sure.
You got to say, if not there, I'm going to be on the face of, the New York Times as the person who
Or on a milk carton. So,
but walking him through the process of disarming her, getting her to want to listen, then having to go around and say, hey guys, you're not holding up your bargain. It's not okay for you to tell her that you're going to do something and then you ghost her. That's not okay. And then how do you hold people accountable around stopping the ghosting? If you say you're going to do something, then do it. If you can't do it, then you have a responsibility to come back and say, I said I was going to get this done by this date. I couldn't. Can I get an extra date out of here? Can I do this? People who set false deadlines because they know the organization isn't going to comply. Well, people get that. They realize that you had a false, they just are too polite to tell you, we know what you're doing. So going through each one of those scenarios and what's going on with the person, and then helping them see from their own level of what are your values and beliefs, and how is that going to inspire somebody? Because we don't teach people with our words. We teach people through our behavior. What is it that you're teaching people
Yep.
that is hitting the mark and what's not hitting the mark? Where is it that you know, that moment where you go, how'd you get to that? Which we never say,
Sure.
but you always feel it, right?
Yep, exactly.
Those are the lessons that we work with people with and their teams to help them get the kinds of results, which ultimately winds up being the financial bottom line,
Sure.
or the emotional tax of managing employees. Both of those go down. Your life is happier, your business is more successful, your customers feel good.
That's awesome. And I think that's really when, for those listening, you know, that's why we're here, people like Denise and people like myself, because there are times where you can't navigate something on your own. You know, you need somebody to come alongside of you. And I, you know, I say this often, that my favorite golfer is Tiger Woods. But the guy's got coaches everywhere.
Yeah.
You would think a guy like that, after all these years, could walk up to a ball, hit it 300 yards,
Yep.
you know, and then lob wedge one on within 5 feet of the, you know, of the hole, and birdie constantly, right? You just think that that's how he does it. But there's, excuse me, there's constant coaching that goes on. And there's times that he has a blind spot. He has a glitch in his swing and he doesn't know it. You know, if you're listening, you might have a glitch in your swing and you don't even know it. And that's why people like Denise and myself are here, to come alongside you for a brief period of time, sometimes longer, because you may have one glitch that leads to 5 more. You may have one glitch and you fix it and you're done. Why it's so hard for an entrepreneur, business owner to acknowledge that, and to be able to ask for help, you know, those are, I think, are the tough questions. So, you know, if you're listening and this is resonating with you, I'm going to encourage you to, you know, call, reach out, you know, do something. You know, Denise would love to be able to help, because that's why we're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
And here's the thing. A, it's a phone call. 2, it's private. You know, you don't tell who's calling you. I don't tell what's calling me. Good coaches don't tell what it's confidential.
Sure. Yep.
And 3, you get to be whoever you want to be.
Right.
You know, and perfection and not asking for help is the essence of why your business is not doing what it should be doing.
Right.
Because if you can't ask for help, that means your people can't ask for help. And help is not weakness. Help is a sign of strength and courage, because now you've opened yourself up to the possibility and the opportunity to do better.
Yeah. Well, and at the core of asking for help, I mean, if you're not able to ask your customer, how can I better serve you? I mean, if you're not able at that basic elementary level, if you can't even do that, you know, that's just permeates through the company. And that's probably why there's a lot of negativity in your culture. You know, people are calling in sick, you have high turnover, people aren't engaged. I mean, we have a hard enough time, Denise, where, you know, Gallup says 1 in 3 people are engaged in their job every day, which means 2 out of 3 people show up and, you know, they're there to punch a clock. They're, you know, happy if they, you know, do as little as possible in a day. So it's already stacked against us from the get-go. So why we as owners and business leaders and entrepreneurs, why we would possibly not, you know, surround ourselves with that type of people that want to help us, that help us with our blind spots. You know, it's just crazy to me.
Well, and you know, this is it, you know, because now we're talking about the tsunami, that's what it is. The tsunami of people quitting their jobs.
Yeah.
So that Gallup survey that you just talked about is now turned into 1 in 3 people are actually looking to leave you. They're, you know, so think about that. And oh, by the way, they're also refusing to come to you, which is why we're having such a hard time finding good people, finding anybody to work in these jobs, because you haven't had a history of really thinking about the people that you work for and the processes that you put in place, and the experience that the people inside your company are having. We spend so much time with our customers and thinking about what our customer experience is. If you don't have a good experience for those people who are serving those customers,
right,
then guess what?
yep,
You're gonna have hard times hiring them. There's two other out of the one out of three, that those other two people
yep,
are just gonna be along for the ride. And
yeah.
and they're not rowing with you.
They're not
Sometimes
even rowing. They don't even have an oar in their hand. They're just kind of along for the ride, right?
Yeah, and that
Nothing
makes
worse than having somebody on your canoe for the whole day that doesn't row. All they do
Yeah.
is they get to look around, enjoy the scenery. They eat your lunch. They do all the cool stuff, and they have not done one thing when it comes to the direction of that boat. And I
And
think,
let me tell you, if that's all they're doing, that's not so bad. But
Yep.
what if what they're doing is, you ain't rowing fast enough?
Yeah.
Oh, it's really terrible. Ooh, the fish stinky.
oh my gosh, yep, right. And then start going, oh, this place sucks, Denise, man. We got to get out of here, right?
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm
like
talking
the
about.
epitome of it is
I
that.
know. I know. And don't think that they're not telling your customers that.
Yep.
And they're not telling other employees that.
Yep, absolutely. And I think as we start to come in for a landing today, I think it's interesting that I'll say me, because I can't read other people's minds. When I start thinking about this team stuff, I always think about high level groups. I don't think about, the Dunkin' Donuts down the street, their team, or, I don't think about it in the day to day. I think about these, kind of these well dressed, nice offices, all this kind of in my mind. That's what I think of. And I totally forget that this is going on, where I'm going to have lunch today, and if we as business owners can't help every person, every level, janitor to the president, if there's hierarchy that I hate, those are things that we really have to take into consideration, that it's cross any company. All companies have teams, and this applies to all of them.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the franchise that Dunkin' Donut, establishes that.
Now I'm hungry,
right
so
now.
don't talk. Oh, no.
But I just got, I'm kind of passionate. I'm passionate about a couple of things. One of them is, we got to change the way we think about work.
Yep.
We have to understand that work is done with people, not through people. And those, every small town and every big town, I don't care where you are, there's a bunch of entrepreneurs out there. Many of them are franchisors who are trying really hard to create a great experience out there. And the problem that they face is that, most of the books, most of the people talking about what's happening are talking about, the Amazons and the Googles. Well, I got 5 stores. I may have 100 employees. I got 5 managers, store managers. I've got maybe a district manager or a GM or something like that. I'm not Google. That stuff could never work for me. Well, those are the people that if we change that number of folks, if we can help them be better leaders over those 5 stores, it builds that community. It builds lives. It touches lives so much faster and in so many ways that we cannot even see. And it's not to be too faith-oriented or religious, but you know what? Being servant and helping other people find their footing, get a good life, raise their kids in a way that makes them productive Americans, productive adults in our world here, community citizens. If that ain't God's work, what is?
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And I think about my favorite verse: what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his own soul? What if he does everything and he still forgets himself or forgets others? He just forfeits what he's about or she's about in order to make money. And I ask clients a lot and people a lot, when's enough enough?
Yes.
How much do you have to, seriously, I got guys and women making money that they've admitted I'll never be able to spend this.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not here to judge. That's the cool
Right,
part.
right.
I don't have a gavel, so
Right.
you guys do what you need to do. I just have to be that balance to when is enough enough.
Yeah.
And I think if you can spill over and start thinking about your team and giving them and giving your customers, if you have a great life, why not spill over into other people? And I think that's why people are going to want to work for you. People are going to be standing in line trying to get into your company because that culture is so, giving. There's such positive energy there. I mean, those are places I love to work with. They're already kind of there. There's a couple of little course corrections that they need, but the vast majority of, they're gone. They're dialing, they're just cruising ahead. And I love those companies as opposed to, the opposite, that just, you have to do some kind of triage and, all right, what do we fix right now? Doors open or whatever. So
I know, and I know we're coming to the end here, but
yeah,
really want people to pause on that last piece of what you talked about, because you can make money by dogging people out, or you can make money by lifting people up.
Yep.
The decision is yours. Going
Absolutely.
back to what we started with of, hey, what are you about? And what are your blind spots? And what are your values? Because both of them will make you money, and a lot of money. And the greed factor can kick in on either one. The question is, do you want to do it by dogging folks out, or do you want to do it by lifting people up?
Dogging people out. I never heard that. That's so cool. Never heard that. That is so cool. Oh my gosh. If I can say amen, I'm saying amen. That is so cool. So that's 2 questions, and then I'm going to let you go. Just so you know, Denise, I got to one of my questions.
Oh Lord, I'm sorry.
No, it's not you. It's me. I'm in charge of this. I'd love to get you back. But 2 questions is, what's Denise, what's Denise Cooper's tip of the week?
Oh, the tip of the week probably is this. Whatever you're thinking about and whoever's whispering in your ear, be conscious of those people who are around you, your network. Because if you've got somebody whispering negativity in your ear, then you're going to see the world through that lens. And so the tip of the week is, who's whispering in your ear and what are they saying to you?
Can you do something easier? I don't like that tip. Let's do something easier.
Brush your teeth. Brush your teeth every morning.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Brush your teeth. Man, there you go. I got that one. I did that one already, Denise. So I'm checking that one off. So that's fantastic. No, and I think that's so important that, we always think that we can be, we're like impenetrable, that we can be around a bunch of negative people and it doesn't affect us. I've yet to see, they always say one bad apple ruins the whole bushel. I've yet to see 30 apples that are good and one that's bad. I've yet to see that bad apple turn good. It still kind of just permeates. So be careful of who's whispering in your ear. That's fantastic. So last
what was
question.
Your second question? Yeah,
I'm one here and I'm going to let you go. This is the tough one though. So, all right. So what's one thing that most people don't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing?
Only a few people know that I'm pretty handy with tools. So my girlfriends call me Chainsaw Denise.
Oh man, that can be good or that can be bad, because that's a good thing you don't live in Texas. So
well, see, in North Carolina we have a lot of trees, and so you always are pruning them back in the spring or the fall. And so you got to get up there and you just got to.
Got some big trees if you're pruning with a chainsaw. Holy cow.
Well, they come in all sizes. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, again, this time flew by. Thank you so much. People did, if something that you said today resonated with somebody, and they want to learn more about you, they want to get in contact with you. You have Closing the Gap podcast, which we didn't even talk about. You have a book that we didn't even talk about. So if people want to learn more, if they want to ask you that question, if they want to get some feedback, what's the best way for people to reach out to you, Denise?
There's two things. One, you obviously can go to my website, remarkableleadershiplessons.com, and there's a contact page on that. But I really prefer people just go to LinkedIn, look up Denise Cooper or Remarkable Leadership Lessons. I've got a little page on that. And then just hit me up as a DM on that one. It's a business orientation. Everybody's on it. It's quick, and I look at it. And so, I love to talk to people. I love helping them. Half the time, I can solve your problem in 20-minute conversations. Terrible. I have a terrible busin's model.
Exactly, right. And then you don't even charge. I'm the same.
And then I don't even charge because it's 20 minutes. What the heck?
I've got people that I've been working with for months that I haven't charged yet, and I'm just like, it's just more of a
You just need
what goes around comes around. Go help somebody else.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's why we're together, because we have the same philosophy.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you again so much for unpacking some of these things. I appreciate your vulnerability, and I appreciate all that you shared. And again, if you're listening, please, I know it's hard to make that first call. I totally get that. It's really hard. And if it's when the pain's great enough, let's put it that way. When the pain's great enough, I hope that Denise is the one that you call, because she'll be able to fix something, whatever that is. And as we said at the beginning, usually it's in a short period of time. She said 20 minutes. So I'm latching onto that. So if you can't invest 20 minutes for somebody to help you, then you know what, we didn't do our job. So I'm hoping that you're able to feel comfortable in calling. And, the worst that can happen, you can even do the witness protection program, use a fake name and call from a payphone so that she doesn't know your number. Then you're even safer. So, but thanks again so much for that. I appreciate it. And, we are always, I take a bunch of notes because I learn something every week. I learned a ton again this week. And again, thanks, Denise, for hanging out with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's funny. And just one correction here. I hate to correct it. Get a burner phone. I don't know that there's any pay phones left.
I saw a payphone over the weekend. I was in San Diego.
Did you take a picture?
In a mall, I should have, because people are like, what is this? On the wall. So yeah. All right. Get a burner phone. If you can't afford a burner phone, call me. I'll be happy to send
There you go.
All right. Awesome. Take care.
All right. Bye.